So I have a confession to make. Harry Potter taught me right from wrong. It's strange, I know, but J.K. Rowling's fictional characters showed me the messy, magnificent complexity of humanity. I grew to identify with Harry and his friends, and not the Death Eaters. If you're not familiar with what a Death Eater is, I can tell you the name speaks for itself. I mean, of course, my parents were integral in sculpting my moral compass, but Harry Potter was a seed, and my parents were the water and sun that allowed the seed to grow. I grew into a passionate, riled-up, active citizen with a question. How can we be different from one another and still love each other? You see, I'm a filmmaker. I go to film school at NYU, and I've also self-published my own comic books. But the most important thing about me is I'm a nerd. And even more than the dress-up and fantasy books, I'm a nerd that cares about pressing social issues, and I approach these issues the only way I know how, with stories. So the 12-year-old me loved the hero Harry Potter, and I trusted him and J.K. Rowling. They helped me navigate issues of class, gender, perceived racial superiority, and even sexuality. Like, for those who missed out, J.K. Rowling is a badass and makes gay wizards named Dumbledore. And it turns out I'm not the only one who read Harry Potter in this way. In 2015, European scientists published research showing a decrease in prejudicial attitudes amongst elementary, high school, and university students after extended contact with the Harry Potter series. So anyway, 13 years later, this is me, nerdy McNerd, going through my mid-20s existential crisis, thinking about the fragility of how individuals perceive humanity and how those perceptions sometimes exclude people, exclude whole groups, exclude families. Now, I'd like to tell you about my favorite person in the world, my mom. My mom was born in 1958 to a black woman and white man, and it wasn't until 1967 that her parents had a right to marry. Fast forward to 1999, my mom began a life with her partner when I was 9, and it wasn't until 2011 in New York, 2015 nationwide, that they had a right to marry. I share with you some of the story of my mother so that you can see this vicious cycle. A cycle of marginalized people's rights, and even lives, being stripped, snatched away from them. Now, we live in a society where demographics are quickly changing, which is a perfect opportunity for multiculturalism and tolerance to flourish. But there's a disheartening reality. Hate crimes have shown no signs of decreasing. Violence still occurs against people for simply existing. Now, this can all come down to the perception, or better put, the distortion of humanity. This is a picture of a family whose humanity has never been questioned. An upwardly mobile, heterosexual white man with a wife and kids. Now, this family looks awesome. I would have brunch with this family. But if this is the only ideal representation of humanity, where does that leave the rest of us? Sounds to me like we're in need of a superhero, which is why I'd like to introduce to you the superhero that saved us. Superheroes are the rock stars of another nerdy passion of mine, comics. Comics comes from the Latin word comicus, borrowed from the Greek word komos, which means to revel. Revel, to enjoy, delight in, love, like, adore, appreciate, relish, and savor. That's certainly how I feel when I read the latest Ms. Marvel, which is an incredible comic series starring the first Muslim American girl superhero. But comics are so much more. They are the caveman paintings of our generation. They are the story of humanity as told by a superhero. So, how can characters like Harry Potter and superheroes help us combat malice in the world? Well, comic juggernaut Stan Lee, who's responsible for heroes like Captain America and Spider-Man, said this: "Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. But unlike a team of costume supervillains, they can't be halted with a punch in the snoot or a zap from a ray gun. The only way to destroy them is to expose them." Here's me exposing them. In 2014, there were reported 5,462 incidents of hate crimes. That is 5,462 too many. So, who is this hero? who will help bring us this better tomorrow? All of you. Now I know you may ask, how am I the hero? Well, my favorite wizard said it best. Differences in habit and language are nothing at all if our aims are identical and our hearts are open. So, how can we be different from one another and still love each other? Empathy. Being Muslim doesn't make you a terrorist. Being Black doesn't make you a thug. Being transgender doesn't make you a sexual offender. Don't let negative perceptions diminish our humanity. You don't need a cape or spandex to save the day. All that we need to fight for is our capacity to empathize with humans whose experience we may never share. Superheroes taught me how to love, taught me how to remain compassionate and considerate in this scary world. I hope that with this revelation, you can revel with me. Enjoy, delight in, love, like, adore, appreciate, relish, and savor. Thank you.